Hey y'all, welcome to part 3 of this mini-series on combining several different techniques to create a project. In this video, we're going to pick up where we left off in the previous video when we calculated the toolpaths and saved G-code to cut out these two shelf corbels that will be used to make this yarn shelf for my wife's weaving studio. Now, if you missed either of the previous videos in this series, I will go ahead and put a link up here to the playlist that contains all of the videos so far in this series. I'll put it in a card up here right about now. So, let's go ahead and pick up where we left off in the last video. We had saved our G-code and we're ready to go outside and start cutting. So let's get outside onto the CNC machine and get going. Okay, out here in the shop, what I've done is I've already homed my machine, set my machine coordinates to X, Y, and Z0, and I have taken my thumb drive out here and gone ahead and transferred the files over from the thumb drive to the computer that runs my control software. In my case, this is Mach 3. Now, some machine manufacturers have proprietary software. Some of them use a pendant, and you plug this flash drive in right to the pendant. And that's fine. You know, do this however your machine manufacturer suggests. If you have a generic controller software program like Mach 3, like me, or Linux CNC, UC CNC, what have you, don't try to run the files off of the thumb drive. Some thumb drives run slow. Data transfer rates get important. You know, it's just better for everything if you go ahead and transfer them off of the thumb drive straight onto the computer. USB ports go to sleep and things like that, so it's never a good thing to run it directly off the flash drive unless that's how your CNC system operates. Okay, so since this is a double-sided project, I'm going to have to drill some holes for my locating dowels, and that's going to be done in this auxiliary spoil board. And the reason for that is because I'm not exactly 100% certain where that bit's going to come down to drill those holes for these locating dowels. I don't want to end up having a hole in the middle of one of my pieces of T-track. So it's just as easy for me to take, in this case, just a piece of scrap plywood and screw it down onto the table and use this as an auxiliary spoil board to mount my material to, and you know, when it comes time to drill these locating dowel holes, they'll be drilled into this piece of scrap plywood. So let's go ahead and get that set up and get my material mounted. Okay, now I know that montage kind of went by a little fast, but what I did during that was I went ahead and drilled and counterbored my mounting holes, flipped it over, counterbored them again, because when I flip it over, I need to make sure that those screw heads are down inside the wood so I don't accidentally hit one in a rapid move. So, then I went over it with real quick with a 220 grit on a sanding block just to knock off any fuzz or what have you. So now I'm ready to mount this to the spoil board. I also went around, looked at it, made sure any flaws in the material, like a planer snipe or something like that, is going to end up in the waste. Little thing about screw placement here, I went way off to the edges because I need to make absolutely certain that when I go do my profile cutout, I don't smack a screw. That would really make things exciting real fast and could ruin your day. So, I got to make sure my screws are placed well out of the way of the bit. I'm going to go ahead and line this up with the front edge of the Spoilboard, which is mounted flush with the front edge of my router table. Then go ahead and just screw it down. Okay, with my material fastened down, it's time to get into the first cut. And what I'm going to do is load my G-code, which will be number 1, the 1/4 inch upcut spiral end mill for my dowel locating hole. So now I need to bring my router forward and go ahead and put my bit up in the collet. And now it's time to set my X, Y, and Z0 for this first toolpath. Once I set my X and Y0 right now, I will not change it. That will never get readjusted. X and Y0 stay X and Y0 forever. This is it. So, let me go ahead, and I use a 3-way touch plate. However you set your X and Y0, now is the time to do it. Test here to make sure I've got good connectivity. One more sanity check just to make sure that it is working. And now I'll go through and set my X and Y0 with my finger held firmly over the panic button, just in case. I apologize for the rotten camera angle. I know you couldn't see hardly any of that. Let me try to put this in the center a little bit better, because now it's time to go ahead over my X and Y0 are set. Those will not change. Now I'll bring down my Z slightly. Do one more last connectivity test. And I'll set my Z0. Okay, my X, Y, and Z0 are now set. Again, I will not be resetting X or Y0 from this moment on. It's done. This is also why on a double-sided project, I tend to schedule ahead, plan it out, to where I can come out and cut the entire project without any interruptions or without having to shut down for the day, go do something else, and come back. This way I know my X and Y0 stays my X and Y0. Now with that touch plate, I can come back and reset it if I want to. I just don't believe in slapping fate in the face. So now that I have it set, it'll stay set that way and it won't change. So let me load up my first G-code and we'll fire this up. That will be the dowel locating holes. Then we'll switch over to the V-bit. I've removed my upcut spiral bit. Now I'm ready to switch out to my 60-degree V-bit. Now, again, I use a touch plate, so how you do yours may vary. I go ahead and bring up the touch plate. I put the bit into the collet. Then I'll go ahead and I'll snap my grounding clip to the shank of the bit. That way I don't shove this up in there so far that I can't get the clip on there, but yet it's still deep enough to where I've got good enough grip to where this bit is not falling out. So, get it on there, do a sanity check. Yes, it is. Tighten her up with my wrenches, and I do use 2 wrenches. I do not like spindle locks, never have. One more sanity check. From here, all I'm going to do is reset my Z0. My Z is now zeroed. Take this away. Load my G code. That G code is loaded. And now we'll go ahead and fire up and carve these flowers. Hey, the VCarve Toolpath has finished running, and I'm ready to flip my material over. Before I do, I'm going to put a couple of marks here on my material just to kind of let me know where this area is when I go to set my Z0. That's just for me. I'm not going to use it for alignment. It's just to let me know where everything is. I'm just going to take a sanding block with some 220 and just lightly, very lightly, go over this area here that was just carved, just to knock anything loose, get rid of any fuzzies that may be sticking up, and prevent this from being mounted nice and flat. Again, very gently. Then over here to this side, do the same thing. Okay, good enough. Now I can take my brush and kind of brush off the dust. Now I'm ready to pull this off of the Spoilboard. And we'll take this completely out of the way. Now, because I drilled and mounted, over here I got these 4 corners here. I'm going to take a single edge razor blade, kind of trim that down where it pulled the material up slightly. I'm ready to change out my G-code, take out my V-bit, put my upcut bit back in it, and we'll cut the locating dowel holes for the Spoilboard. Okay, I've swapped out my bit. I've taken the 60-degree V-bit out, and I'm back to my upcut spiral 1/4-inch end mill. You can see the project material is way back here. I'm getting ready to flip this. Before I can do that, I've got to put my locating dowel holes here in the auxiliary Spoilboard. So what I'll do is, I've got my touch plate. I'm going to set my Z0 to the top of the Spoilboard because that's what I'm going to bore those holes into. So I'm all set up here. Do a quick sanity check. Now I can load my G code, and again, my X and Y0 has not changed. Okay, for those of you who keep telling me that these holes are not going to match up because they're on opposite sides of the material, you got to remember that we're going to flip this side to side. And when you do that, the hole that's here flips over to over there. Show you what I mean. Put my dowel here, my dowel here. Take my piece of material, flip it over, end for end, slip down in here to where I can see. And I still can't see. There's one, there's the other. Boom, right into position. Now, again, my X and Y0 will not change. Now I'll fasten this down and we'll move on. With my material screwed back down, it's time to go ahead and pull this upcut spiral out of the machine and go back to my V-bit, and we'll V-carve the flowers on this side. Okay, with the VCarve toolpath finished, I can move the router back out of the way. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and just lightly take a 220 grit sanding block after it and just kind of gently knock any surface fuzzies off. Now it's time to go ahead and switch out, take out this V-bit. We'll put in the downcut spiral and we'll do our profile cutout. So let me get set up, set our Z0 and go for that. Okay, with our profile cutout finished, I can get the router out of the way. We can take a look at what we've got here. I'm going to again take my 220 sanding block with it still held in place by the tabs, and I'm going to run over it here just gently but firmly enough to get rid of any rough edges around here. Now, everybody has their own way of cutting tabs. I tend to use my little oscillating multi-tool, so let me grab that and we'll go ahead and cut this out of here. This is my oscillating multi-tool. I have about a 1 1/4, 1 1/8 inch wide blade on here, rather fine tooth blade. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut my tabs, get these parts out of here. And here are the finished corbels. From here on out, it's just like any other woodworking project. We'll get them finished sanded, we'll start applying some finish, some paint, and get it assembled and hung up on the wall. Speaking of which, the design committee has come up with yet another change, and that is she has decided against the epoxy fill and just wants a normal paint fill instead. So you know how that goes. What the design committee wants, the design committee gets. I don't have to like it, the client does. So, I hope you got something out of this series. The whole purpose of this series was to take a bunch of individual, simple steps and techniques and combine them all into one project. And I hope you picked up on that. All of the things that I've shown you in this series are things that I've shown you in other videos. The difference being, this time we put them all into a project that we actually came outside and cut on the CNC. Now, I know I didn't get as in-depth as I could have with transferring files off of the flash drive and into the computer, then loading up Mach 3 and showing all those screens. But every CNC router is just a little bit different. So my process is probably going to be different from yours. The main thing to take from this is that if you are running a CNC that uses a separate controller like Mach 3 or Mach 4 or WinCNC or UCCNC or something like that, that runs software, controller software on a computer that's dedicated to the CNC router, transfer the file off of the flash drive onto that computer. Don't run it from the flash drive. Things happen. USB drives slow down. USB ports go to sleep. Data transfer rates can speed up and slow down. The best bet is to just take a few seconds and drag it onto the desktop even, and then run it from that computer. Now, obviously, if you're using a machine that has a proprietary controller that runs through a pendant, then use your manufacturer's recommendations. But I'm speaking of the more generic CNC controllers. Don't try to run it from the flash drive. You'll have a lot fewer headaches if you just transfer it over to the computer and run it from the computer your control software is on. So, I'd like to remind you that today at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session right here on my YouTube channel where we'll discuss everything I did in this video, and we'll go back and discuss everything else in previous videos in this series if you'd like. So again, that's noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern today, right here on my YouTube channel. Now, these live Q&A sessions are a great excuse to go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And when you subscribe, click that little bell button right next to the subscribe button, then click it again. And in that menu that opens up, select all notifications. That way you'll get a notification every time I post a video and every time I go live. Now, we have a lot of fun in these live Q&A sessions. I really enjoy them a lot. So I do hope I'll see you this afternoon and in the future. So that's going to do it for this video. I'll put a link to the live Q&A session down in the description box below, and I'll put a link to the playlist for all of the videos in this series. And as always, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and y'all take care.